all for upcoming meetings so that we can congratulate her. So,
Thank you, Madam Chair. So, actually over the summer, Ms. Nagel went and ahead and applied for the Excellence in School Psychological Services recognition. And that recognizes the organization commitment in hard work, for mental health, behavioral health teams who support the learning and mental health needs of all students so that they can thrive in schools. And of course, I've just read the bottom line. This is across the entire country, and folks from every state and school can submit the application. It's pretty lengthy. And generally what you do is you apply, or you fill out the application, you apply, and what it's great for is that they send you feedback. So that way, if you don't hit the mark, they can say, well, this is great, but we'd like you to on this, or we'd like to on this, or whatever the case may be. And what you're really hopeful to do is that you receive a proficient, and I think there's one more above proficient.
Sub 3.
Example. So proficient is really hard. And I don't know, but they would not give us the percentages of folks who apply for the first time to receive a proficient, but I can assure you that it's very low. The percentage is low that you do it for the first time you actually get a proficient. You get it. And what makes this just such an incredible word, or just to be recognized, is that just think about some of the districts that are also recognized, like Milwaukee Public Schools. And I'm trying to think of the size and scope, but the services that they can provide, and Eric Hansen was one of them. The only district in the state of Massachusetts who's ever received a proficient rating is the Boston Public Schools, and now they're advanced regional and continental. So it is really something, the grand scheme of things. And so actually went down to New Orleans. I keep wanting to say Texas. I don't know why. New Orleans, that's where the actual conference is, and she is there representing Eric Hansen, and she is going to accept obviously the award on behalf of Eric. So it's quite an accomplishment. We have put out these pressers to Telegram who's yet to respond to this good news, although they did, put a nice blurb about how we put our snow day on, call out on Facebook. They just have to miss this, which that might be a bit catty, but I think it's worth it. And so that is an Apple, and the Apple Daily News is also published. So we really did make a big deal of it. Actually would like to hear if she's accepting the board. I suggest that although it will be large, to get her and some of her team so they can really be recognized and explain it a lot better than I can. So it's quite a feather in our cap, and really represents a culmination of a lot of hard work over the past, say, 3-4 years to get us where we are today. So it's excellent.
it's wonderful. Well, definitely pass our congratulations along. That is a big recognition. And really represents the hard work of everyone. And we'll look to have everybody here because it would be wonderful to hear from folks on the staff about this award and what it means to them. Great. All right, so we'll fly through our next 3 agenda items. Our student representative is not here, so we will not hear from him tonight. There is no public present physically, so we will skip that item as well. And the NDEA is also not here, so quick fly through those agenda items. So Anne Marie, I will bump this back to you for FY24 budget update if we have any.
The thing I want to point out is that we will not need a budget increase this year, which I think the staff really appreciates. People a lot of times they feel like when the freeze is coming, like I got to make sure I spend everything to get what I need, but there's no pressure on them. So it's a really good feeling this year to just not have to worry about that.
That's great. That's really good news. Okay, so for our FY 25 budget update, we had our tri-board, meeting, last week. And I know, due to illness and some other factors, not everybody could be here for that meeting, so what I don't wanna do is make Dr. Cassavant present, the entire PowerPoint again, but what I thought we would do is sort of go over some highlights from last week's meeting. But then what I wanna do is make time for folks around this table to get to ask some questions. See what we can do about answering your questions, or if you have any comments. Because our next meeting on March 14th will be our preliminary budget presentation, so if you do have questions or comments or things that you would like to see that are not currently in this presentation, this is a good time for us to collect that feedback, make any changes that might be needed. That said, it was, I'll give my brief commentary, which was that it was a really positive meeting. It was a nice time to sit down with everybody, share what we're seeing for the district. There was a good amount of questions and participation, which was excellent. And as I mentioned during that meeting, like, this is something where we need to come together with our towns. We know that there's a lot of financial pressures on the towns collectively. One of the big kind of closing questions was, with all these residents moving into the towns, what are the town's plans to address the needs of this increasing population overall? Because it's not just the school that's being impacted, it's other services as well. But Dr. Cassidy, I would kind of hand it back to you to see what else you would add in terms of a summary.
Yeah, so as we've done in the past, we really, we didn't build up to, this crescendo of like, this is what we need, and we just started off with it. And really, we answered a lot of questions about why. So if you remember the slide presentation, it was why, why this, and why is it, $1 million, and why, and how did we get there? A lot of it, I think that, when we start talking about intersection of these intersections of issues, or sometimes their thoughts, etc. But in this, it's really it's come to a head. We're plus 100 kids over 2 years. We knew this last year. We identified some significant needs, especially at the middle and high school, and the elementary as well. We talked about that, and we got to a point where I believe that we were very happy to have 5 elementary teachers at every grade, and that was really our big rock for last year. But there were some things that we were not able to get to, or we were not able to fund, which was mostly at the middle and high school. And what we kept saying is that we have a large number of students coming up to the middle and high school. We talked about that, and as I said, is that we worked with the towns, we got to a number, and it just didn't work, because immediately in August I had to add a special education teacher at the elementary, and 2 months ago or 3 months ago, we had just too many students who were just not servicing in the areas of literacy, and we had to add that. So those we know that, I guess we kind of hoped against hope. It didn't come to fruition. What we really tried to do is really focus on what we have been doing, what we've done. And we talked about the 6 teachers who are teaching an extra course, one extra course, but an extra section, giving up their prep time. And they are compensated for that, but we're burning them out. So at the high school and middle school, we have a grand total of 6. 2 of them are special education teachers, but the lion's share is at the high school, because we have a lot of kids up there now, and we're not able to able to offer the sections, but some of these sections are just really huge in terms of numbers. So we tried to paint a picture of like, this is why we need the money, right? This is why we're asking this much money. We talked about how Chapter 70s, we were held harmless. We were negative or -8 foundational students from last year to this year, which is really flat. And that meant that the 100 kids are still here, you know, and we talked about how we reduced the number of school choice kids over the last couple of years. So in the end, ultimately, I think that the highlights are we have a lot of kids now. We have 40 new homes in Templeton through by FY22, from FY22 to FY24. I believe it's 18 in Phillipston. I don't have that slide in front.
24.
24 in Phillipston. There you are. That speaks to where and how these kiddos came to us in such a short amount of time. We did not even enter into conversation or add it into the numbers, the Baldwinville, I'll call it the Baldwinville project. So you're right. At the end, it was, what is the plan? And are we part of this plan? The numbers are not, these are not one-time kind of, you know, kind of miracle, you know, things. They're coming and they have kept coming. We are filling up, especially up in this area. And what was the plan in terms of town's response to all of these homes that are being built? And you know, we're going to talk more about that as we move through. I think that I agree. I agree that the meeting was very positive. And it was, and there was, sometimes these meetings can, you know, are not positive and they can go a different direction. I think that I absolutely agree with Julie Richards about like, well, gee, Chris, you know, we need firemen, we need policemen, we need, you know, EMS services, and we need to add those, but they haven't, and we haven't been able to do that. And so the longer we wait in terms of, and by the way, my concern are teachers, and I need more of them, not because we're trying to be lazy, is that we have all of these kids. And so the longer we wait, the harder this is going to be. And you know, the question was great, like, Chris, you know, are you going to come back and ask us for more money next year? Yeah. Because I may have 40 or 50 more kids. If we didn't have this many kids and we asked for this amount of money, then you should run me out of town. I believe is what I said, because it would be true, quite frankly. But these are things now that we're, and we talked about teacher salaries. I thought that was a little hard. I think that, you know, I was told afterwards that they had no idea about the administrative, in my day, the administrative and teacher salaries being so low locally, below the average, not from the highest, but from the average. And, you know, Mr. Toth was quick to say that they had done their own salary survey a couple of years ago and knew that their salaries were very low. And I can appreciate that, but we are in a market of trying to, you know, recruit and teachers and policemen and DPW and it's hard and it's a fist fight a lot of times through, you know, when we're up against other districts. So I think we painted I really do think that the picture that was painted, at least initially, was very balanced. We weren't being outrageous. We supported every position with data. Most of it was about, yes, class size, but a lot of it was about literacy. So it was like almost these dual, you know, yeah, with class size, and we have what I'll call a literacy issue, right? Really about COVID. We've always been very well positioned when it comes to our literacy numbers, reading, you know, scores, etc. But we are struggling right now, like a lot of towns. And I believe the number was 260 eligible pre-K kiddos out there. I think it was, I don't want to misspeak, 248 by fall. Now we don't, you know,
It's referencing slide 15 for those.
Slide 15.
Yeah.
Yeah, we didn't get all, we're not gonna get all of them, we never do, but that's the largest number that Terry has seen, when she's been here a lot, you know, a long time. So growth is good. We like kids. That's what we do. But we need a plan, we need to work together. Both towns, I'm not, you know, Phillipston as well, to really set out and see how we're going to meet this need, because we won't be able to do it on the drop of a dime. We just, you know, turn the ship around, but we're not a ship. We're actually, you know, we're several ships, and it's going to take time and planning.
So I think that we've, with the increase of special needs kids, I know I'm jumping on a little bit, but again, the slide deck, which we're not presenting right now, that is another issue that which we've already talked about in terms of what we had to add this year outside the budget. But in any event, I'm certainly I certainly would love to hear what the thoughts are from the committee. Again, we've got a lot more conversation to have about this, but I was called by the select board and when they start talking about these plans moving forward for not only this year, we're going to be involved. And I think that is the real takeaway, as far as I see it.
So just to call attention to a couple slides specifically, just so that folks have some frames of reference. For some of the great comments from Dr. Cassavant. On slide number 2 there, you see level service called out. So level service, which means essentially we don't change a single thing about what we're funding in the district. We just keep funding what we're already funding. Is already a $767,020 increase year over year, what with, all the reasons for why level service increases, that's contractual obligations, retirement, legal fees, et cetera, et cetera. Really, if we look at what is needed by the district, and that's continuing to catch up on the needs that we started talking about last year, and that are elevated coming into this year for the middle school and high school in particular, with some continued investments at the kindergarten, because we never fully got all the paras we needed at the elementary level. That increase goes to 1.1, almost 1.2 million, specifically $1,165,820. And that is a big lift for the towns, because chapter 70, we only got the additional $39,000. So those are, in terms of the numbers, and I know that this is a very numbers focused crowd, those are what I want to make sure get called out, because it's a lot. And then, as Dr. Cassavant mentioned, there's a number of slides that sort of explain how the numbers are increasing, how it's impacting our schools, how we're managing, not only for the students we have today, but the changing needs of our students, in terms of those, special education needs. So that you can sort of scroll through to see the specific asks. If you scroll down to slide 20, that details the specific positions that we're looking for. So in the middle school, there's 2 unified arts teachers needed, one focusing on music and one focusing on literacy. That both helps to rebuild our music program, which I know the community is very passionate about, as well as address the literacy need at the high school levels. That 8th grade Spanish teacher, for those of you who were here last year, that was talked about a lot. I'm going to move to TES for a moment. That's the 3 ABA paras. We've been able to add in some paras this year where we identified monies that were available. But in order to, fully bring in 3 more ABA paras for kindergarten to have all the classrooms covered. Monitech After Dark teacher, just to give you some background on what that is. This is something that Dr. Cassavant presented on before, but this is for the collaborative agreement. Help me out.
Yeah, so Fitchburg, Gardner, Narragansett were asked to collaborate a couple of years ago on this program in which we would send a grand total of 12 students, 6 juniors and 6 seniors, that would go week on, week off to receive vocational skills training, but they would be our students. So juniors would go, say 1 week, and seniors would go another. What this does is it allows us to complete the kind of our task list of trying to have a well-rounded high school in the sense that we didn't have a lot of vocational offerings. And this was a good opportunity to do that, but you need a teacher to be there for those kids and to do other things. But when they're not at Monty Tech in this program, they are back here. And so they need to, of course, have a traditional curriculum as well. So it's a teacher that we need. We have already applied for the process of applying for these grant opportunities to cover this teacher. We don't know if we're going to, to get those funds. But it certainly resonated with our communities that we'd like to do more vocational, have a better vocational offering like they've had in the past here many years ago. And so this was a way to achieve that. It's a great opportunity. Many of us think this is where the future is for vocational, say training, certainly for the traditional K-12s. But we're lucky enough to be part of something that hasn't been done, I don't believe, or at least limitedly in the state. But it's something that it's going to need money in order for it to happen. We're concerned about that, but we know that kids would like to do that. And these are kids who've never got into Monty Tech. They wanted to get into Monty Tech and they did, right? That's a whole other, rate.
Sean, do you have a question?
Yeah, are these 3 pairs in kindergarten in addition to what we just hired this year? Okay, and then my second, and I'm sure there's maybe somebody can help me from last year. Is there anything that I can cross compare to where we were last year to what we're doing this year?
Yeah, last year's budget presentation, it's in the, it's in Word docs, you should have access to it. But the budget presentation was loaded there, there's
I just didn't
also
know if, I know,
documents on the website.
I know it was a presentation, but I just want to know what the actual budget was for last year, line item by line item, so that I could compare or contrast what actually goes up, because those are the popular questions. Right, what went up this year, what went up, what went up last year, why is there an increase? And it's much easier to defend the budget or defend these questions when people ask them by saying X, Y, and Z, right?
So that's all on slide 3. So you can see what happened with chapter 70, what that percent change was, charter school reimbursement, etc. Templeton contribution. And then if you go down to the next slide, you can see the FY24 budget and level service and what would be the increases and decreases against level service. And then you can see the proposed FY25 and the percent to FY24. The comparison. So all of your line item increases and decreases are on slide 4 and slide 3 and slide 4. So that shows you where the increases are,
Okay, thank you.
mostly in instructional.
I think it's been said, and I think if there was a summary statement, I would say that we're still trying to catch up. And Jen just said this, but we're still trying to catch up to the 100 kids that we've had over the last 2 years, and we haven't done that. And we're going to need to do that at some point, because these kids are not, they're coming. And in thinking about this, and it's hard to give just the overview of an hour ultimately, but the plan would have worked. I said this as well. The plan of reducing the number of school choice children in the manner in which we did, especially at the elementary and beyond. If we would have grown at the typical rate, actually, we weren't growing at that time. We were actually starting to see decreases in student population overall. When COVID happened, it changed everything. And so the people had moved out this way. There was that whole housing boom, in terms of buying houses, et cetera. And I don't know if this region has seen such an increase in kids, or the number of kids in a short amount of time. And if it would have just leveled off, we would have been, I guess, okay, it's kind of leveled off. Pandemic is over, people are coming out of their houses, et cetera. but it continues. And so we're playing catch up with people, which is going to mean more resources. And when you have a level service as high as it is right now, and the fact that it's not going to be good enough, quite frankly, to meet the needs of the kids, and the staff and all the other things, that's where it starts to get really worrisome. Because we're struggling now to hold on, in terms of the numbers of kids, and we're gonna have to do something about that.
Okay, I got one more. So
No,
I'm
that's-
just,
that's
just,
what
I'm
this is
just
for,
trying to
ask
figure out, I'm
questions.
just trying to figure out how to read this. So in the request column, right? It's all under instructional. Is that what we're requesting from the town? Am I reading that correctly?
Those are the incremental dollars that we're asking for above level service.
Understood.
Okay.
Those are all the positions on
Yeah.
that slide.
Yeah, that's what I assumed.
So what's being asked for from the towns is detailed more explicitly on the previous slide. And then the percentages in here at level service and
Right on that slide.
Level
Level service
Yes.
slide.
We're certain.
Oh, yes, I'm sorry, the impact to it's in big bold letters on the left.
Yeah, that's what.
It's been a long day. Yeah, so it's about, so 7.6 for Phillipston and 8.7 for Templeton at level service. And then on the previous slide, slide 3, sorry. It's, at the full amount that's being requested, it's nearly 11% for Phillipston, and about 13% for Templeton. So it's not, it's a lot. And the town had a lot of questions, but they were all good questions, and generally it was aligning with what they were seeing in other spaces as well. Questions, because I know, like, Kat, you asked some good questions during the meeting. I don't know if you had other ones pop up.
Repeat my question.
Sure. Can if you want.
I was excited, intrigued, and worried. Again, worried, what's not the right word? Cautious when I saw that you're looking to eliminate the user fees
Yeah.
and then that's not just athletics, right? That would be like, right now, I off the top of my head, I'm aware of athletics and theater. I'm not sure who else pays. I mean, is that put them in any how much magically fund?
School choice.
School
Because
choice.
we don't have to take health insurance out of it anymore.
Okay. I mean, as a person who now pays multiple user fees as well, multiple times a year, who needs to pay her user fees for the next round, that's exciting to hear, but are we, would those funds have given us any leeway for some of those positions, or, I mean, you don't want to put positions in the school choice, but,
It'd be a one-time. We would have to discuss it every year,
Yeah.
The school choice should only be really used for one-time costs. Now, once we get insurance out of there, which we'll be able to do at least in terms of the year-to-year benefit cost. We'll have to look at that, but we've started to see some folks who are just not, able to have their kids participate. We've never charged any money to someone who has a financial, issue. But we have folks who are just not going to ask for that type of
Right.
help, and we don't want that to be a barrier. Kids come to schools for different reasons, folks. And, if it's the extracurricular, if it's those type of things, then we want to make that available so that we get them here. And that, we don't put a barrier, up, or at least we want them to enjoy it while they're here. So those are the kind of things that we were trying to, that we're trying to hit as well.
Well, thank you for that.
I can repeat one of the questions. I was worried about the increase. I know it's in the middle high school, and I had put out there that like what's gonna happen with the Phillipston Elementary School, since it's an empty building. I wasn't pinpointing any certain grade to be going there, but like if we're really overrun and we need space, like why would we not utilize it? I
So,
do agree, though, with the answer that Dr. Cassidy gave, that it would best be served in our district as an early childhood center, but that doesn't mean it can't be used interim for other option.
so can I take a first stab at this and then have you add in?
Sure.
So it's a great question, but the biggest barrier is that we actually can't, that is not a usable building for us anymore. Even if we had a need literally tomorrow for a space for students, which is space is not really our issue in middle school and high school. The issue is much more class sizes, which we heard from our towns are too large. But the Phillipston building itself isn't eligible for use at all without significant investments that can't come under our budget at this time. So even if space were an issue tomorrow, but I'll come to you in just a minute, but Dr. Cassidy,
I'm
did I say
gonna
anything?
ask a follow-up question.
Oh, okay.
on that. Who's in there now?
It's not our building.
Okay,
The last I knew, I think it was like homeschool.
I thought it was homeschool family, so that's,
Yeah.
and I didn't know
Might
if
be.
that was hearsay or what the story was, cause I think my follow-up question now is why is it eligible for that and not eligible for us? This is
Yeah.
just a
Well-
curiosity question, and maybe you're gonna answer to that, Dr. Cassidy, so.
Sure, it, when you are in a building, codes change, et cetera, but as long as you're in the building, in the school, you certainly need to meet basic code, of course you do. But if you vacate the building, then it needs to be brought up entirely to code. So, for example, you can't have a building with steps in it, like without an elevator, and there was an elevator. I'm just using this as an example, okay? So, the best example is if, one of the elementary schools, we had elementary kids in these buildings that were built 120 years ago. Because they were in there, and so their grandfather, you can operate as a school once, if you're still in there. Once you vacate it, and it's no longer a school, to actually go back in, it has to be brought up to code. I believe and again, I would defer to those who know best, but for example, you cannot have a wooden frame school built. You can't do it. Even if you wanted to, I believe that it's again, state code, right? Well, that's a wooden frame building. So even the MSBA wouldn't come in there to do, a green repair, like a new roof or windows or doors, because they do not touch anything with wood frame, anything. So it can't be utilized by us, even if, we were welcomed back with open arms. The idea is that it would not meet code for a school, now that it's been closed as a school. So we just couldn't move into it.
And I'm glad you asked the question because it is something that comes up often in the community and there's just that gap in understanding that yes, it is a town building, but it isn't a building that we can access or use anymore because it isn't meeting the code qualifications.
And that has come under scrutiny. I will, just to be very clear, that has been argued that the school was never technically closed. It was put on pause. I want to make sure I use the right word. The Phillipston Elementary School no longer is listed as a school in this district. So we could never just then reopen that. And to talk about it a little bit more, if I may, that was the plan, was to, while all the 2020 stuff was going on and the meetings, and we desperately wanted to keep the pre-K down there. And to the extent that we did not move their things into the new building, in hopes that we would be allowed to do exactly that. Phillipston turned that down, and then we had to then move all of their things out to Phillipston, from Phillipston to the new school or to wherever. That, so then we had, when I say decommission the school, what I'm saying is that then we had to officially tell the Department of Ed that it was no longer a school, because we, you know, the accountability, you know, why didn't you do any MCAS? Well, we don't have any kids, you have to close the building, so. It was I just personally, I believe it was a missed opportunity. Everybody would love swing space, if nothing else, for that kind of, you know, these purposes. If we get large, I mean, we get bigger, let's say at the younger level, that building literally is perfect for pre-KK, whatever, because it's all one floor for the most part. And it just has a lot of land behind it. It gave us a lot of opportunity, but it just didn't come to fruition.
I guess I'm like. Honestly, but I am concerned that if it doesn't pass, the increase of like class sizes, right now, I feel like our district is very well spoken of. I think people speak highly of it and they want their kids to come here. I don't want it to turn around to be like, oh man, they can't educate their kids, like they don't have room for them. I don't want kids to be dropping out because they're not happy. Like, I don't want parents pulling their kids to school choice and then we have to pay for that or lose them because we're not accommodating the needs that are coming in. And I feel like all of that, is being addressed in this budget. And also, I am not like very good with taxes and stuff, but I feel like if we're building all these grand houses and they're like, I mean, they're expensive, like I looked at them. I mean, those have to bring in some sort of revenue for taxes in the towns. So I don't understand.
That's a great point. I have to tell you that I am not aficionado when it comes to, the tax base, but what I do know, with having to do this now, last, say, 4 years, is your point is well taken. So we took a drive today. I think it's important to talk about it because Anne Marie literally knows every house on every street. It is savant like. Because she does the busing and she's been here a long time. But she took us for a ride today because when she talks about these neighborhoods, I have to go, give me a frame of reference, because we're talking about buses and vans, and so she said, get in the van, Chris, let's go. So we drove around and we did all of Templeton. We'll do Phillips in another day. We didn't have time to do the whole thing. But yes, you're right. We drove past 3 houses that are going in Templeton that they're planned to be sold or at least put on the market for $750,000. Well, that's a lot of money. And depending on what your tax rate is, holy cow. But what we know is that it'll never equate to the taxes that you get, say, from a business or otherwise. I've heard a lot of very smart people say, I'm certainly not one of them when it comes to this, is that you cannot balance the budget on houses. You can't, because although it's a lot of money, now granted, maybe you could if you had $1 million houses everywhere, I guess, like there's a limit, but not for this community. And so that was the question I asked. And I think, is if you are building 40 houses in Templeton, or there are, permits to do so in whatever state, that's a lot of houses. That's a lot of houses in 2 years for a town this size. There are more coming. All these kids are coming. We can't afford, say that, just in our sense, the teachers that we need now, and just the teachers. What's it gonna look like in 5 years? And if the gap is now even bigger, if you're gonna wanna raise taxes,
Well, my
you
other
couldn't do it
question
hard,
is-
you couldn't do it soft enough to not kill people. You know what I mean, in terms of their tax rate, right? I mean, sorry.
Well, and this is very controversial, I would say, what I'm about to say, but it's like, we have a gap, right? We have kids that are low income, and then we now have these parents that are coming in buying over $500,000 houses. And those people, I would hope, would approve a budget like this for their kids. But if it doesn't, and our school starts going downhill, those are the people that are gonna be sending their kids to private school and stuff. And,
We're worried about that, right?
yeah.
But I'll say this, I'm not trying to be, we have if this was, education is a business. So first off, anyone who thinks differently is just, I appreciate but this is a business, and you're right. What are we trying to do? We're trying to offer programs educationally, athletically, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, that are good for kids, obviously good for adults. But we want to keep our people here, right? We want to keep our kids here for all the right reasons and for the dollar reasons. And you do that by making sure that you give them back to the high school pieces. So here it is, right? The flagship there, the high school is we're getting them ready for. And so what do we have now? We have early college, we talked about that. That was a big, people wanted early college. They wanted something about, like, give them some skills, right? Give them something to get ready for for the world, about Project Lead the Way. STEM career is the largest career, growth, especially in Massachusetts. So we have, we have internships, get them out in the community. Some people don't ever realize go to work. Great. So we got them out there working with the various, we don't have a lot, but we have kids who go out there, work at Haywood Hospital, the DPW, with the fire department, the police department. So these kids are looking at those fields. For the trifecta basically is that if we got a vocational component, well, now we've really done our thing. But you're right, we do have to make sure that we kind of quote unquote, wrong analogy, but keep up with the Joneses in a sense, but you have to live within a budget too. So we're also realistic of that. But you gotta keep it safe. You gotta keep good teachers. So you're gonna be able to attract good teachers. Right? We had one teacher and that's there's no slighting the teacher, but she was here, right? Ms. Smith was here, like that. And I spoke to her later about all the things that we spoke about. And of course, she's going to agree. She's worried about that too, right? Because you want people, when they retire, you want to be able to attract the very best that you can, right? That you can. Well, that's how you keep kids here, right? So we do provide a service, right? You're right.
And the other thing is to, like, looking at it from a teacher perspective, even if we didn't pass the budget, or we did or got the teachers raises or whatever, but our kids grow and we don't give them the space they need, we're gonna burn our teachers out. They're not gonna be happy, the kids won't be happy. And so, like, I feel like all of these things, it's ebb and flow, like, you have to grow and move with what the,
Yeah.
with the demands of it.
It's true.
Those are all excellent points, and they're all very much were front of mind as we started to put together this budget plan, because it's, we have to make sure that, we're building a plan that's, sustainable and keeps up with the growth. So, points well made. So, all right, well, before we move on to the next agenda item, I just wanted to check one more time to see if there's questions from anybody else, or does everybody feel like they've been heard for now? Okay, great. All right, thanks, everybody. Thanks for bringing good questions and, making great commentary. That's always appreciated. It's important for us to hear from everybody over the budget season. So thanks for that. All right, Anne Marie, back to you with the business manager's report.
FY 24 budget is doing well. The general fund is what we were talking about earlier with the budget freeze. And not having to have one this year. And this is the time of year with the grants where we are really like assessing, is the money being spent down? Are we gonna have it gone by June 30th? We need to make amendments to some of the categories. So I'm working with all the grant liaisons to make sure that we're on target to have that money spent at the end of the year.
Well, thank you. All right, I don't see any surplus items, so we'll move on to our school year calendar.
I'm actually, I was not at this meeting, and so, but I do want to just say, as I do every year, is that we have the very best calendar committee ever. They are the same group, they come in, they got all these ideas, they created, I say it every year, because they are really great, and they get right to work. We come in with a bunch of information, we're ready to get going. We really get this done, I think, in that one meeting.
Down to one meeting.
Down to one meeting. So it's really, it's honestly, Anne Marie does a great job kind of marshaling everyone and keeping everybody, on task. So I'm gonna let Anne Marie actually talk about it. And Molly too. Yes, I'm sorry. But lots of times.
For me to pass it off to.
Right, but in terms of the days and making sure that we know all this stuff is right, I'm gonna definitely still keep Anne Marie up top on that. So do you want to just talk about Molly?
Well, we proposed two draft calendars to the committee this year, one starting prior to Labor Day and one starting after Labor Day. And the committee actually created sort of a hybrid of the two calendars that we shared with them. Where we are starting a little bit later, but still before Labor Day. The only major change it's not really a major change, but the only change you'll see is that in comparison to this year's PD calendar, school calendar, we moved a PD day earlier in the school year because we've had this history of having a half-day PD day in May, which is not optimal time to do professional development or training when folks are so close to looking at the end of the school year. There was a history of having it there because of attendance rates with hair appointments for prom historically. So there was this long historic rationale for why the day was there, but it really is not relevant, and it isn't the most ideal day for professional development training for teachers. They're really not thinking about changing instructional practice in their classroom at the end of May. So we did move that date earlier in the school year. Other than that, the calendar is pretty straightforward. There wasn't a lot of discussion. And everyone seemed pretty content. Some of the changes that we made the year before, around adjusting some of the dates and timelines for parent-teacher conferences remained. So the union members are quite happy with the schedule or the draft that you have in front of you. So that's about it. Any questions? Any questions?
I have a curiosity question. How's that committee formed?
There's representation from across each school. There are
Okay.
teachers from each school, some administrators. There wasn't an administrator from each building. But there were there was one, usually there's two teachers from our elementary. We had one at the table, two middle school teachers, high school principal.
Cool. Yeah, I served on one. Those are always exhilarating meetings, so that's fine.
It seems like it's been a long-standing committee. The same people have served on it for quite a while, it seems like. But yeah, it's really a well-oiled machine. Everyone comes to the table really open to listening and hearing each other's ideas. Really collaborative.
I'm always surprised about what they pick. I just, you would think a certain thing and they were like, they'd be like, no, we really think this is the best for everyone. So, or in the kids, et cetera. So they really do an excellent job. They really do.
Any other questions? So I would entertain a motion to approve the 2024-2025 school year calendar as presented. So moved.
Second.
She can end. Motion by Pat, second by Sean. Any other remaining questions? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, abstained, and I say yes. So the 2024-2025 school year calendar is now approved. Okay, for the next two items, I'm going to very quickly hand this over to Anne Marie to explain what we're doing here. It is a very long motion, as you've probably already noticed, but I'll let you give some background, Anne Marie. Good things, all good things.
So we are applying or sending in our statement of interest to MSBA to see if they will approve for the roof on the high school and the middle school to be replaced. They had the program on hold last year. We were gonna do it then, but it was on hold, so we put it. So we just opened it up. The deadline to get these submissions into MSBA is March 1st. One of their requirements that we have to do is there's certain language which is attached that the school committee has to vote to approve this. And what this does is this is giving permission to the superintendent to submit the document to MSBA. And because this building is considered two separate schools, we have to submit two separate submissions, one for the middle school and one for the high school. So I've been working with the facilities director, trying to fill out all the information because it's a lot. Just like the roof is broken down into sections, and I think there's something like 27 different sections on the building, and you have to number each section, and for each section, you have to give the square feet of that area, you have to be able to put conditions in. It's a lot of information over my head. And the facilities director has a roof report that we had done. We had inspectors come out in 2014. They gave us this report on the whole roof, and it's like an inch thick. So that has actually been a godsend for the information that we need to fill out the form. So this is I don't want to say the last step, because we still have a lot of work to do in the documents. But this is one of the necessary pieces in order for us to submit to SBA.
Thank you very much.
A new roof for middle school and high school building is real high on the list of capital improvements that are needed. So much appreciated.
Anne Marie, do you know if MSBA will require another report, or if step one would be to do another report, that they will do another report?
Yeah, this is very preliminary. This is basically to get on a list that says we have these needs. Then MSBA looks at the list, they'll send like an inspector out to come say, oh, you can go to the top of the list, no, yours isn't ready yet, submit again next year.
Feasible,
So yeah, like, it's like, by the time, like, if you were chosen from this point here, it's like a 3-year process before work can even begin, because once you get selected, then you've gotta go to your towns for a town meeting vote, if they will approve to pay for that portion that MSBA is not covering. So it's a long process and a big commitment, but it's step by step.
Any other questions about the process or what's being asked for? Okay. So, I need to read these motions as they are written, and then you'll vote. I would entertain a motion to authorize the superintendent to submit to the Massachusetts School Building Authority the statement of interest form dated February 2024 for the Narragansett Regional High School located at 464 Baldwinville Road, Baldwinville, Mass. 01436, which describes and explains the following deficiencies and the priority categories for which an application may be submitted to the Massachusetts School Building Authority in the future: replacement, renovation, or modernization of school facility systems such as roofs, windows, boilers, heating and ventilation systems to increase energy conservation and decrease energy-related costs in a school facility. This SOI is submitted due to ongoing roof deterioration causing numerous leaks. Leaks have persisted despite attempts to make repairs. Narragansett Facilities does not have professional EPDM repair equipment to make large-scale repairs. Leaks are difficult to trace due to the steel beams, insulating panels, and other components that channel water away from the origin. Leak penetrations in interior spaces continuously require maintenance in the form of replacing ceiling tiles, paint or drywall repair, and floor and carpet cleaning. Slipping incidents have occurred due to leaks on hard surface floors. Community members have expressed concern over repeated water penetrations in the building. And hereby further specifically acknowledges that by submitting this statement of interest form, the Massachusetts School Building Authority in no way guarantees the acceptance or the approval of an application, the awarding of a grant, or any other funding commitment from the Massachusetts School Building Authority, or commits the Narragansett Regional School District to filing an application for funding with the Massachusetts School Building Authority.
Second.
Motion by Heather and second by Sean. Any questions? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, abstained, and I say yes. So the resolution related to the high school SOI submission is unanimously approved. Moving on to middle school. I would entertain a motion to authorize the superintendent to submit the Massachusetts School Building Authority the statement of interest form dated February 2024 for the Narragansett Regional Middle School located at 460 Baldwinville Road, Baldwinville, Mass. 01436, which describes and explains the following deficiencies and the priority categories for which an application may be submitted to the Massachusetts School Building Authority in the future: replacement, renovation, or modernization of school facility systems such as roofs, windows, boilers, heating and ventilation systems to increase energy conservation and decrease energy-related costs in a school facility. This SOI is submitted due to ongoing roof deterioration causing numerous leaks. Leaks have persisted despite attempts to make repairs. Narragansett Facilities does not have a professional EPDM repair equipment to make large-scale repairs. Leaks are difficult to trace due to the steel beams, insulating panels, and other components that channel water away from the origin. Leak penetrations in interior spaces continuously require maintenance in the form of replacing ceiling tiles, paint or drywall repair, and floor and carpet cleaning. Slipping incidents have occurred due to leaks on hard surface floors. Community members have expressed concern over repeated water penetrations in the building. And hereby further specifically acknowledges that by submitting this statement of interest form, the Massachusetts School Building Authority in no way guarantees the acceptance or the approval of an application, the awarding of a grant, or any other funding commitment from the Massachusetts School Building Authority, or commits the Narragansett Regional School District to filing an application for funding with the Massachusetts School Building Authority.
Second.
Motion by Heather and second by Sean. Any questions? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstained, and I say yes. So the resolution regarding the middle school SOI submission to MSBA is also passed unanimously. Thank you, everyone. Okay, so we don't have any items that were not anticipated, so we will move on to the superintendent report.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So I really only have the two items that are directly below. The vocational school referral. So last year, it started during my own budget time, right, in February. We learned that a student that resides in Templeton wanted to go to Norfolk Aggie for vocational school. And it was really a new one on a lot of us, because many of us had never had this come up in conversation or in any situation. So we did a lot of quick learning last year. And so what the state will allow is that the school committee can in fact pick a vocational school of preference. This has nothing to do, folks, with Monty Tech. Okay, so Monty Tech is our regional vocational school. It'll always be our vocational around something drastic happens. But this is more this is more in line with for agricultural vocational schools. So there are a couple of agricultural schools, vocational schools out in Western Mass. And so the reason why we're talking about this is that sending someone to Norfolk Aggie is very expensive, especially with transportation. And the committee can, in fact, designate a vocational school of preference that may be closer. It has, but offers the same type of skill set. So what I've done is I've reached out to, there are in essence 2 vocational agricultural schools out west. I've spoke to one superintendent just about the offerings, and we have not been able to connect with the second. So with your permission, what I'd like to do is, well, finally get a hold of the other superintendent. We've just been missing each other, but is bring to the next meeting a recommendation for the committee to at least consider, placing it, on our preference list. And there's a lot that goes with that, ultimately. So a student would have to apply, would have to accept the fact that we that we had a vocational school of preference, as long as it met their needs, et cetera. And again, it gets into a lot of what we dealt with last year about, well, could I deny the student? Access to that, we couldn't because I can't deny a child, and then, an education, especially if we cannot offer it either here or in our regional vocational, which is Monty Tech, and they do not offer any type of agricultural, vocation, so. I wanted to make sure I did my due diligence and kind of almost compare the agricultural schools to make sure that, we have a good offering if it should ever come up again. And also for your consideration, in a weird. It is, if you think of it from a strategic point, that you couldn't make it, don't forget. The actual, the preference of your vocational school, because we already have someone going. And so transportation would be, so another student would cost the town any more money. Okay, so meaning that if it's one van, we're paying X, they're not going to, it's going there anyway. Obviously, it would, they would have to pay the tuition, but they wouldn't have to pay an additional transportation. So some things to kind of almost think about before we have to think about them. If you do decide to designate a vocational school, then it would have to go into our handbook. So that everyone is knowledgeable that hey, if you want to go to other, here's Monty Tech. Right? And here's X, where it may be, if you want to go for agricultural, vocation training. So I want to kind of give that, want to tease it out this time, talk about it now. So that way next month, in March, to kind of lay out all of the options. So that way, if you decide to do that or not, you have at least a foundation of thought as we.
I have a couple of questions. How many students would be accepted into the second? Like, is there a cap for Monty Tech?
Oh, for Monty Tech,
Is there? a cap for Monty
I'm gonna get me in trouble.
Tech? I'm just wondering.
There should be, no, I'm trying to be coy. There should be, I believe it's 22, 22 or 23 is our allotted number. But because of the wait list, they take more than that. And I find that to be problematic for the town, because they pay that. And so, from a unfunded mandate type of slant, you could get into the situation where you're paying for 35 kids, but you're only budgeting for 22. So there is no cap necessarily.
Okay, so that would be the same for the second one?
Sure, yes.
And when you present the options that you're gonna present two?
I'm going to give, I haven't talked to the other vocational superintendent out west of the western part of the state, but I probably will, two if not three.
Okay, and just like all the information that.
Yeah,
each
if
one-
there's, what are the major differences, et cetera.
Yeah.
If any, if any.
Couple questions was, one is. What would be the direction that we would be voting on for? Is it annually or until school committee voted to change it to a different school?
Your second, all right, so once you establish it, it's in the handbook. That'd be your school, of your preference of vocational for agricultural schools. Until you just, if you. So
Till we decide to look again and change it. Second question, why agricultural? Just because no other folk school around here has agriculture?
Yeah, so
Okay.
what we learned, and by the way, when I talked to my colleagues from the western part of the state, for whatever reason, they have a lot of kids who go to other type of vocational schools, and it's in excess of $1 million. Now granted, these are extreme cases, so you definitely want to make sure that you do your due diligence on these situations, so it can be problematic. you know, I guess, problematic. Look, I want every child to, get an education. We do not offer agricultural, there's no agricultural offerings around, so if that should be their choice, why wouldn't want to stop their dream? We also have to have a lens to the town and be, you know, to be fiscally responsible and help them do that as much as possible, so. This is good news, so I'm glad we ended this on a good note. For reason my report is that we, like the adults or the community, we did, you know, as you know, we did a survey, for a budget survey to see where folks, where they want their money spent. And we presented that out. It gave us great information. It really helped us kind of formulate a lot of what we were in to think, what we're thinking about in terms of budget. And it also, you know, said, hey, I guess we're on the right track. There's a lot of the things that the community had said we were in line with. So what we did, and we plan to do this, is that we offered it to the 8th through 12th students. We gave them a truncated survey. I think we have to put this up just to make it a little bit. Okay, thank you. So, of course, this was truncated in the sense that we did not ask them as many questions. It asked them basically the same type of questions, just not as many. And so I would start with saying that the first question was, hey, what best describes you? Where do you live? And you know, but almost right down the line, 70% of the kids who answered the survey were from Templeton. 11% of the kids who answered the survey were from Phillipston, and close to 20% were school choice. So it's about right, you know. So when you look on question 3, as the district prepares our yearly budget, where would you like to see money spent? Please rank in order of priority the following areas, 1 being the highest and 7 being the lowest, which is the question that we asked our community members. And, you know, people ask me prior, what do you think they're going to answer? I said, I don't know. I mean, Lord knows, you don't ever know. But athletics came out to be number 1. And the very close second, though, were upgrades and upkeep of the school or the buildings, which I thought was very interesting. Extracurricular activities was 3rd, and then classroom supplies, fine arts, course class offerings, and technology kind of fell, you know, various places between 4 and 7. So first off, when I saw that, I'm like, okay, because we left them a blank to just basically write something in. And I go, oh, I can't wait to see this. This is going to be, you know, like, they can't wait to see this. A dome, you know, I'm just trying to think of some of the things that I would say. I think as a kid, if they gave me this opportunity. So what we learned, quite honestly, is that they were very thoughtful. They were extremely thoughtful. They said things like, yes, turf field came up along. Yes, it did. But also, you know, I'd like the floors of the gym to be redone because they're slippery. Sometimes we need new uniforms for our younger, you know, kids or the younger grades. I think they were talking about middle school. We'd like to have more sports. How about volleyball? How about this? So, right off the bat, we didn't see things, you know, that were so like outrageous. I'm like, you know, this is crazy. They were thoughtful, and it really made me feel good because they took it seriously. And, you know, I don't know if you have the slide up there. You don't have the slide that says, you know, answer. Yeah. So the comment slide said, be appropriate. So every time I said something, I'd be like, we said, be appropriate, you know, because, you know, just be appropriate. So when we looked for additional comments and we said, so that was great. And it aligned. It really did. If you think from a facility standpoint, if we're thinking about the roof, no, they didn't say the roof. Some did though in the comments, some did, but it was close. Facilities, they want their place to look good. So we talked about this. That energy was really like, I would like, you know, for the building to, you know, to be painted inside, because when people come, I want it to look nice. You know, when they talked about the field, they talked about it from the perspective of when people come here, we want it to look presentable. We want it to look like this. If you remember, for the committee members, we talked about the sign. The very first class that I had as a superintendent wanted to change the sign. They were embarrassed the fact that we put up letters are swinging, you know, they were falling down. They wanted a sign because it was embarrassing when other people came. So we got the sense about, you know, really about upkeep, about making sure that the building doesn't look run down. And that really that transcended both athletics and facilities, but yes, they were like this, the roof needs to be fixed because water's leaking in. You know, in certain areas, we want, you know, they asked about security, they asked about a lot of different things. So then we asked two great questions, I think, is that what are we doing right? And what are some things that we can improve on? I believe that was how we worded them. So, you know, I held on, it was like, hold on, you asked, no, look, I need to be appropriate, if you're gonna ask me, I'm gonna tell you, right? It honestly was emotional to read some of these things, that I was just preparing for, you know, whatever. Like, so these are just some, there were, oh my God, was it 19 pages, Susan? I think. There were almost 400 comments, close to it, right? But like, these are just some of this, these are things that we're doing right. Good atmosphere for all. Educators are helpful and insightful. There really is not anything that Ganson is doing wrong. And I'm like, I'm gonna cut that up on a t-shirt. You have great, helpful teachers who are great and fair. Teachers are good. Teachers are good. Good teachers. Help students. Nice teachers. Again, I'm not gonna read them all, because there's 400, right? You fired good teachers. I appreciate the honors classes provided and the support that students and classes have access to. I think it's really awesome that Ganson does classes with the Mount, and I plan on taking early college courses here in my junior and senior year. It's clear that students who are serious about their education are supported. Are you kidding me? Right? I'm not like, we are keeping our budget at a steady pace. Teaching us things that we need in the real world, upgrading the outdoors equipment and other things. I like the food, but I'm gonna cut that out because I gotta get to what we can improve on. Getting New Jersey for the school, giving sports more attention, everything. I actually can't think of anything bad. Ganson has a good amount of tissues right now. Tissues are good. Good aid people, okay, so what I wanna, and I'm going to, when I did a word cloud, I think I shared this, I did a word cloud about what word comes up the most, and then, you know, that's the largest word, and the next largest word, good teachers classes. That was the word. And so I did a word cloud, I sent it to the union, you know, to Eric and Lisa, and said, these kids didn't have to say this. They didn't. Matter of fact, you could argue, you know, that you're surprised that they do, right? Because we sometimes think that these kids are just walking around, just egomaniacs, and they're not. They really do appreciate the things that we're trying to do. And the number of, and I'm gonna count them, because I want the number, but the number of things that we are doing right, referring to the teachers in the classes, far outweigh everything. Everything. I don't, you know, there were some other ones that would just make you, you know, like, you know, in my old school, I wasn't popular, but here I actually have friends who care. The guidance staff really helps me through. So, I mean, there were some things that are just absolutely wonderful. And so I'm like, oh my God, this is all the information, because we don't really get that as teachers, right? The parents. Right? We don't get a lot of, like, you know, when they're small, they love you, and then you don't even know if they're home. When they're older, you're like, are you even home? So these kids took a moment of their time. They could have absolutely said nothing, whatever. They didn't. They took the time to say some incredibly thoughtful things. And I'm going to share that with the staff. Hopefully tomorrow, try to get these things, you know, kind of organized in a manner that we could do. So what can we improve on? Well, overwhelmingly was the school lunch. So let me just say for the record that as long as schools have been, And as long as lunch has been served in it, I think that, well, you know, you would find that school lunches, would be, you know, probably if one, if not number two. Although counter, argument is that in the things we're doing right, the salad bar was by far a big hit and has been a big hit. Matter of fact, we've had to expand the offerings of the salad bar because we're just running out of salad, folks. I mean, it's been great. But, the trap, oh, sorry.
Mostly.
We're told that we are definitely scrimping on the croutons. Apparently, croutons are a thing. The track came up a lot. And there's some comments in here like, I'm not even an athlete, but you bought a track and you can't even use it, like, but you know, so that came up a lot. And the track, the food, I feel like, you know, it says, better food, yeah, a lot of better foods. I'm trying to think. Last lunch events. You know, see if these will understand better about needing time to prepare across, you know, go for classes. So there's some excellent things in here that we definitely are going to look at. You know, one of the things that came on the good side was that you do fun things to make school fun, you know, and we didn't see that on the other side, whereas that you don't do enough fun things. So what does this all mean? Well, first off, we've got some very reflective kids. And quite frankly, grades 8 through 12 at this point, if we did another survey and they told me something, I'm going to believe them. Because the way they did this survey, you're pretty much setting yourself up when you say, tell me something I'm not doing good. You're just waiting, right? They were very thoughtful in their responses, even about the food. You know, like, well, it's terrible. No, they're like, I want another microwave. I bring food, we only have one microwave, I only have so much time, I need another microwave. You know, stuff like that. Yep, okay, but that's something we want to talk about. So all in all, when you look at our survey, when you look at that survey, athletics certainly didn't come up number one in the community survey. I think it was number 3 or 4. I think if you look at the comments though, it was more about the facilities, but that's fine. But the upgrade and upkeep of the building was a shock to us. It was. And when you read the comments, what you see is that, and we're doing some of these things like the library, they want their library to look like a library. Okay, they don't know a lot of the fact that we're working on that. They want the foyer to look as good as it is and want it to improve, because why? It's the front door of their house. They want people to come here and look around here and go, this is nice. So a lot of takeaways. It was a great survey. I was worried at first about what we would get, but they outdid themselves as usual. And I'm just so proud of the comments that they got, and I'm going to share this with the teachers because they said some most amazing things about how well they are liked. They didn't have any good things.
Any questions about this here?
About the superintendent duties.
I believe there were a few things that could be improved, and we're looking at changing up the creative team a bit, I don't know, but no. It was, thankfully, there was nothing about the superintendent there on either side, thank God.
I don't know, Katie, does that mean you want to star role?
Oh.
We just got a partner.
Well, thank you for doing that. I know that was, and thank you to your staff as well, because I know that they helped to disseminate that, in addition to yourself. So honestly, it's so good to get student feedback. It's so great to hear from them. And it honestly was just a joy for me to hear what they were saying and what they were asking for. So really, really appreciate that time. And thank you to the students for giving us that feedback.
No, it was good. It's great.
I have to say, as a college administrator too, it's very similar to some of the stuff that comes in for the admissions team when they're doing that. So, I mean, hearing you talk about it, it's actually not surprising. I wouldn't have thought about it, but it's not surprising because that is a lot of what comes in when students are all looking to attend college.
So that's just right. It's not a race.
Now they call it, you know, you gotta have the good science, you gotta have the Grange Science Village, you've gotta have the student unions and stuff, and so they know that, right? Our stuff was more about aesthetics, which I was really, it was just very, it was great, it was interesting.
So we have school choice enrollment on here. Did you have any significant updates?
Now, we
Okay.
were +1
Okay.
overall, month to month. Month over month.
So. Move on to curriculum instruction. I know that Molly, you have a few different things for us tonight. We'll give you a second just to pull up your slides.
So it's that time of the year again where we have just finished our middle of the year MOI is middle of year. Benchmark assessment. Assessments for both reading and math. And so I have a really high level big picture overview for you, and then a little sneak peek at some of the work our teachers are doing to dig deeper into more specific data that you don't have in your packet, but that our teachers are really digging into through both our Analytic View platform as well as through our Renaissance platform. So I know I go over these slides often, but this is just a reminder for folks. All students in our district take STAR Reading and STAR Math. And you can see up here that there are a variety of different strands or domains that we collect data on those assessments. And then our youngest students are kindergartners, and at the beginning of the year, our first graders, instead of taking STAR Reading and STAR Math, they take an early literacy assessment in STAR, which assesses early literacy and early numeracy skills. So our kindergarten data is a little bit of a different data set. STAR is an adaptive assessment, so it's different than MCAS in the sense that students are not all assessed on grade level standards. It's when students answer certain questions, they will get progressively easier or progressively more challenging depending on the input that students provide, and it finds their essentially their independent level. And it is not timed assessment, so students don't have a limit on time. It is all selected response questions, so it is there's no writing component for this. It's meant to be a quick, like going to the doctor and getting your temperature taken, just a quick assessment of where you are at this point in time. I know we've talked about this a lot, but when we talk about benchmark, we mean where students are at this point in the year in relation to their grade level peers. When we unpack data, we look at 4 main categories: students who are on benchmark or above benchmark, students who are on watch or approaching, so they're sort of those students who are on the cusp, and then students who are below benchmark in need of intervention or significantly below and in need of urgent intervention. So with that said, let's jump right in and take a look. When we look at our overview of our middle of the year data, not a surprise to most of us here in the district, but we see a higher percent for most grades of students performing on benchmark or above benchmark in reading than, in math than we do in reading. This has been a trend for us for a little while now. And this is the reason that literacy is a focus in a lot of our buildings. So you'll see here that in the majority of our grades, that I should have told you earlier if you can't see that, the orange bar represents the percent of students who middle of the year scored at or above proficiency in reading. And the purple bars represent the current percent of students at or above benchmark in math. So you'll see that pattern or trend across just about every grade level. Actually, let me take it back. Just about every grade level. Our third graders is slight change there. So when we look at and compare our beginning of the year scores to our middle of the year scores, we see some interesting trends. At our elementary levels, we see an increase in the percent of students at or above benchmark across the board. So in all of our grades at our elementary school, there's an increase in that percent. When we look at the middle school, we tend to see that opposite trend. One thing we've been talking about quite a bit is that this is the cohort of students that went through elementary school during COVID years. So their literacy, we know, is a high need. that fifth grade cohort, we are in the process of hiring a reading interventionist to support some students with special education needs and additional literacy needs as well. When you look at these bars and you see a decline, this does not necessarily mean that student scores declined. What it means is if the benchmark is here and now the benchmark is here, students may have grown, but they didn't grow at a rate to keep up with that benchmark. And so that's important to know if you're looking at this. And we're digging into who are those kiddos, what was their growth rate, you know, how do we address making sure that we are addressing their needs to speed that growth rate up so that they are getting back on track. And then we've seen, you know, consistent growth in our high school for the most part as well. When we look at our math scores, we see some larger growth in some areas, but again, a pretty consistent pattern. Where if you look, our elementary schools are consistently making growth. Our sixth grade, we're seeing a lot of growth when we look at our math scores there. And then in our high school, we see some inconsistencies in the growth patterns there as well. But again, that's the percent of students on or above benchmark. So it doesn't necessarily mean the students aren't growing, but they're not growing at a rate to keep up.
Can I ask a quick question?
Yeah, please.
I don't understand the benchmark part, and this sounds really silly, but like they're changing the state is changing the benchmark or
No, so
per grade the benchmark changes.
yes, I'm glad you asked that. So every grade at different points in the year, so they're beginning of the year, middle of the year, end of the year, it's based on normative data. And so basically at what point in the year students are testing determines what that benchmark cutoff is, but it's based on national norms. So if all sixth graders at this point in the year, this is the, you know, benchmark that's set based on national normative data. And so that's how that's determined. So it's different depending on the point in the year when you're assessing and which grade level. So with all that in mind, I think it is worth pointing out that I know we talked about this with our MCAS presentation last year, but we have for the first time ever national trends in our NAEP data from 2022 showing a first ever decline in math scores across the nation, and a decline. There's been a significant decline in literacy scores. So our current NAEP data shows 33% of fourth graders across the US are reading at proficiency and 35% are proficient in math. And so I say that because I think it provides a little bit of context, because what we're seeing, especially when we look at our literacy trends, is we're seeing positive trends in our elementary school that are showing that we're in a recovery effort coming out of the pandemic. And we're showing still that impact in the students that were in our pandemic year, you know, as students during that time, which aligns with what we're seeing with national and state trends as well. So it's kind of interesting just from a bigger perspective to step back and look at that as well. So what are we doing? At the school level, our principals are really using this data to think about how they're prioritizing their time and where they're spending time in classrooms to support teachers, in common planning times with teachers, how they're aligning professional development goals, and some of the use of their faculty meeting time as well. At the department level and grade levels, classroom teachers are really digging into their specific data. And so I want to show you an example of what that looks like, because I know I talk about that a lot, but sometimes I think it's helpful to see. So here's an example. Our high school ELA team, they take a look at data down to the strand level. So if you look here, what you're going to see are the strands that students are assessed on for literacy. And they identify, okay, we're doing the best, right, in these two strands. So craft and structure and vocabulary acquisition and use are the two strands where we have the highest percent of students at, above, or approaching benchmark. That's actually incredibly exciting for us to see, because our high school has been focusing school-wide professional development efforts on vocabulary. So our middle school has the same trend. And so when we look at the data and we see our strength is in vocabulary right now, we're excited because that's where our professional development efforts have been. So that's a nice win for us to see as well. We also see where the areas of needs are really in integrating knowledge ideas and reading a range of complex text. So this helps us to really say, okay, these are, you know, going from looking at our class, here's some strand data for us to consider as a grade level or a department. From there, teachers then take a look at data down to the standard level. So we can actually look at all of our students by classes and say, how are they doing on certain standards? And how does this help us identify goals either for our class or for a small group of students or for individual students? So this is an example from one of our high school English classes, and you can see very clearly that this first standard is, generally speaking, much stronger than the others. This is citing textual evidence. You can see here, this standard is one that we really need to hone in on, and this is around determining the central idea of the text and how it develops over time, how an author develops that over time. This is interesting because this standard, when we looked at all of our English classes, was a need. So it wasn't unique to one or two classes, it was unique to just about every English class. So our English department put together an action plan to focus on that. And so what you'll see here, this is an action plan template that we're beginning to use across the district for planning either adjustments to practice in our classroom based on the data or interventions or extensions for students in small groups. And so you can see here, I'm not going to go through this in its entirety, but I want to show you as an example, these are the classes that we took a look at for our students, and you can see almost across the board, at least 50% of the classes were not meeting on the standard. So we said, okay, where do we teach this in our curriculum? Most cases we've already taught this, but it's still a big need for us. So the department is working on a couple of things. One, making sure they're revisiting it and explicitly teaching it again, and then looking for opportunities to spiral it throughout their lessons so kids have constant exposure. They're looking at the materials they have used and additional materials to use to help teach that, when they're going to be doing it. And then in addition, how can we monitor our progress of this? How can we check in with our students more frequently with formative assessment to see if what we're doing is working and students are developing a better conceptual understanding and application of this as readers. So one of the things they're doing, they'll be using some exit tickets where kids read a short passage and have a chance to practice. They're also going to be using STAR Custom, which is the progress monitoring side of STAR, where you can actually design your own assessment as a teacher and you can sort for questions by standard. So they know the standard, they can go through and search the bank of questions and either choose to use those or to create their own. And so they're pretty excited about that. Our math department has done the same type of process, but their action plan looks very different because unlike the ELA standards, where they're anchor standards that are really similar, grade to grade, but tweak a little bit, theirs don't. So the algebra class versus geometry class and so forth. So what they're doing is they're unpacking their standards and they're looking at their class level, and they're, instead of as a department picking goals, they're doing goals based on the class or course. At the elementary level, our teachers are looking at this in a different realm. They're looking at this for how can we use small group instruction during their core literacy block or their WIN block, their intervention block, what I need, to be able to provide more small group targeted intervention. So that's the next step of how we're using the data at the school or classroom level. I wish I could show you data that showed all our graphs growing and we had positive growth. But we have some inconsistencies in our data this round.
Any other questions for Molly on that?
Thank you. That was excellent. It was really great to not just see the data, but to see some examples of how it's being used. So really appreciate that.
Okay.
You know, I have one more item. While she takes a sip, Molly's going to give us an update on a couple of the small group committees at school, wellness advisory, and the equity committee.
So our equity committee was charged at the end of last year with doing some work to provide recommendations for updates to the district's dress code. And so to date, the committee's met three times, thank you, sorry, but at least twice. And what the committee first did was they started off by establishing a vision of what criteria they wanted to make sure was present in whatever the upcoming dress code would be. And so they made sure to align their criteria with the committee's vision and belief statement for equity, which they created last year. They then analyzed our current dress code in relation to that criteria and looked at the school committee policy as well. National research, and then we unpacked, and looked at, I think about 20 surrounding districts' dress codes, as exemplars. So we currently have a solid set of criteria, and a lot of language or examples that we've pulled from other policies or dress codes that we've looked at. And we're in the process of creating a draft. That won't just happen at the equity committee level. It will go to the administrative team. We'll get feedback from teachers and students and so forth. But we're pretty close to getting that on paper. So it's been really, really great work. We have a really great representative team of folks at the table as well. Our wellness advisory committee's also been meeting. And that committee has been a continuation of last year. We have a couple of members who are new. We have a new PE teacher who joined our committee, new to the district this year, and we have a new community member who's connected with Haywood Hospital who joined the committee as well. That committee has been started off going back to the local wellness policy implementation evaluation form that we completed last year. So that's a 3-year cycle that we do that evaluation. And the evaluation is looking at where are we currently at implementing standards and practices from our wellness policy. We use that to find where our strengths, where our areas of need, and use it to establish goals. So this year we revisited that evaluation, and we really honed in on 2 standards and practices to focus on increasing our work around. So those 2 areas are USDA meals, and particularly the standard around increasing student participation in school meal programs, and physical activity. And the standard for that was providing ongoing opportunities for students and community to kind of merge the whole goals together there in physical activities. And so for the school lunch program, we are going to be working to continue some taste tests this year, which we started last year. And seeking input from students into our school lunch program. And so I had a chance to meet with our new food service director last week. He's really excited. This is in direct alignment with his goals for his department as well. So he'll be joining our wellness advisory committee starting this month, and is connecting with our student rep to already start talking about some ideas that he has and she has. So there's a lot of great energy there. And then around our physical activity goal, we are still in the planning process, but we're talking about putting on a district-wide walkathon. And possibly a 2-pronged walkathon where we have a walkathon during the school day with students, and then connected to our Warrior Fest, doing an event for community and families to get them active before eating all those potatoes and gosh, what else? Donuts and so that's right. And we're looking at doing that as a fundraiser to start raising money for a wellness advisory fund so that we can use that funding to put on and host wellness activities in the future. So that's the work the committee is working on now.
Any questions for Molly about either of those guys? No, thank you very much for that update. It sounds like you've all been busy this year. Lots happening and lots going on. That's fantastic.
Yeah, we've got great teams at the table. We have a lot of people that are both passionate and just really excited to do the work as well.
That's great. Thank you so much for the updates. And please pass on our compliments for all the great work happening.
Well, thank you.
Moving on to subcommittee reports, finance and facilities, we worked on the refining the budget presentation. There was presented at the tri board meeting, so beginning and end. But district operations, Danielle isn't here, but you were there. Do you mind giving an update?
Yeah, our 2 biggest highlights, where we got to see a preview of that student budget survey and see some of those comments that were so dear. And then my favorite part, was we got a sneak peek at the analytic view. Man, I just want that. That the staff, teachers, admin can use to really bring all of their data together in one very powerful, very, at this point, elegant, interface. So, that was for me, sorry.
We have a lot of data nerds, on the committee, so that's great.
And then we also, worked on the concussion policy.
Oh, yeah,
Or-
great. Yeah. Good, good. Okay, Labor Management Committee, we did not meet with NDEA today, that was postponed till March. We did meet with UFCW, this month. Continuing to have those meetings, they're continuing to go well. It's a nice space for some relationship building, getting questions answered, et cetera. So it's continuing to go very well. So Shauna is our liaison to CPAC, and she is out this evening. So Kat, do you have any updates from PTO?
Yeah. Just a couple, it was a quick meeting. Let's see, sure it's important. We were left with $9,000 after all of the approved field trips. And if we don't do anything else with it's after these two things. So if we don't do anything else besides the field trips and the theater at the Mount, we're left with $9,000. But we do have Square One Art coming up, that we're probably gonna make some money. So the money will probably go up from there. Fundraising is the Square One Art and possibly a fun run. There's no date set for that. There's no new requests. The PTO events, we were trying to figure out what would be the cheapest thing to make the most amount of money, but also encourage the most amount of people to come. And so the ideas were the painted goat, karate night and ice skating, and nothing's been set in stone, but it seems like ice skating would be probably the cheapest, and we could get the most amount of families to come that way. We talked about how we probably need more advertisements since the breakfast wasn't highly attended. Let's see. This will probably be, the event will probably be in April. And we probably need like a QR code or a flyer or announcement or all three of those things to try to gather as many people as possible. Let's see, math night is coming up in April or May. And I guess it was like really well attended last year, so they really are thinking that maybe it needs to be split into two different sections due to parking and the amount of people who are attending, and possibly hosting it at the high school so that more people can show up. But Gabby and Jess are gonna look into that. That's gonna be in April or May, and then we do have a new treasurer, Caitlin Williams. Is our new treasurer, and Dana is going to make sure everything is clear on the current account, close it out. The bank will issue us a check with a balance, and Katie will take that check to open a new account at Fall Savings Bank. The next meeting is Tuesday on March 5th at 5. You guys want?
Great. Thanks so much for the update. Did I already update everybody on the Student Advisory Council? I will update again. So I can't remember if I did this in the last meeting or not, no. So on February 6th, I did a presentation to the Student Advisory Council on school budgets. So it was a high-level overview of what is a school budget, where does it come from? Where does the money come from? How does the money get used? There was some great discussion around like, what's the difference between how a corporation, a for-profit company budgets versus how a school budget runs. There was also, conversation about where does the money go? How do we make sure that every dollar that we bring in is spent and spent to its highest potential? There was, there were some good questions, some decent participation.
but, you know, overall, the great part was that the students were engaged, they were, you know, lots of folks were definitely understanding what was going on out there, and that was great to see, because, I mean, school budgets are complicated. I think I learned something new every single year that I've worked on the budget here. And, you know, I'm still learning, because there's so many nuances and details, and, you know, the state makes changes, to how things are done. So it was great to get that out to that set of students, and then the survey followed, that meeting. It wasn't specifically targeted to the Student Advisory Council, but went to all of the high school grades. So yeah, so it was a good meeting. I will be attending not the next meeting, we decided I would come in every other month. The idea is to come in with a topic, but one that then they're able to give input on or ask questions about, so that we can make sure student voices are heard. The next one will be specific to athletics and athletic fees, so we're gonna talk about, like, you know, what does it cost to run a game and things like that. So, you know, it's an opportunity to talk to the students about what it takes to run a school, and, you know, even what the impact of local government is too. So talking about, you know, town government and the school committee, et cetera. So yeah, it was honestly, it was fun. It was fun for me. Hopefully fun for the students as well. So yeah. Okay, and Daniela's not here as our legislative representative. I don't have any specific updates that I've seen other than, budget news coming through. One of the things we're keeping a close eye on is transportation and what monies will be available for transportation in the coming year. That is something that it's usually, what is it? Usually they expect to be about 75%, and this year they're saying it'll be below that. Do I have that right?
They have the numbers that they put out are an estimate of 80%, but they're saying that's gonna be a reach.
Okay, so the estimate they put out is 80%, but they don't think they will hit that.
Yeah.
And we already accommodated for that to a certain, or tried to accommodate for that to some degree.
I went with 80%
Yeah.
of what, that was my guess, and it was right on. So,
Okay, so
but
what they're
they
saying.
warned that you probably won't see 80%.
Okay. So that's probably the biggest news coming out of the state at the moment, unless you have any other updates.
Is it, I'm sorry, transportation for out of district kids or all of our
No,
kids?
no,
Out
sorry,
of-
kids, in district kids.
Yeah.
Okay.
So the way that it works, and correct me if I get this wrong, but the state will reimburse up to a certain amount for transportation for students who live more than 1.5 miles away from the school. So it's an interesting calculation that Henry has to do every year. And they don't refund everything. The towns are responsible for the transportation costs. But there's some-
Regional
Yeah,
transportation.
regional transportation, yes, thank you for that. Yeah. Yes. Okay. School committee comments, any comments from anybody on the school committee? Sean, you look like you're thinking about a comment.
You know, I mean, I can say a couple. I mean, Dr. Casavan, thank you for going to the board meeting and representing. I know I missed the last meeting, so the all board meeting that we got to sit at together, and I believe Molly was there as well. So the three of us got to enjoy that. So I certainly appreciate seeing everybody there. And great community feedback on this. I'm not trying to be cute here. The pullback on the school day.
Oh, yeah. That's great.
The community would rather believe it or not, no, I'm serious. So the community would rather the kids in school, right? When they're supposed to be in school, when they were supposed to be in school.
Right, exactly.
Yeah, the Facebook,
We got some fun.
the feedback, the feedback's been positive. I can get it done. Yeah. Oh.
So I just wanted to give a shout out to the new, I'm gonna get the name wrong, but there's a new service in the middle and high school where students can be, the telehealth services got rolled out.
Yeah.
And parents have an opportunity to, if they're interested, sign up their kids, and I knew about it because I sit here. But I sort of forgot about it because it hadn't been rolled out yet, so it's so exciting that that service is finally here. I mean, that's so huge, I immediately signed my kid up. And that's just a really exciting new community benefit, that if, you know, if a child needs to be seen, then they can be seen via telehealth right away.
Oh, at school?
Yeah,
I'm sorry, I didn't know that.
yeah, middle and high school level.
Oh,
Am I
okay.
getting this right?
No, you're
Okay,
we're
yeah.
100% right. It's not at the high school. Right, it's only at middle school, high school, sorry. I knew there was two, but we are working on the other, but yeah, we're, very happy with that. It's been well received.
So really exciting. So just, I know that it took some work to get set up and roll out, so thank you very much. That's a great community benefit. All right, so our next meeting is Thursday, March 14th at 5:30 PM. It's our very exciting preliminary budget hearing, so coming out, we're excited. We-
It's Biden.
That's pie, well, I mean, we might need some pie. And there's no need for executive session tonight, so I would be happy to entertain a motion to adjourn.
So, second.
Motion by Hank, second by Sean, all in favor?
Aye.